Matt and Christina are two educators who live in Connecticut and work in New York, who we met and interviewed way back in February 2017. In that episode, number 43, they detailed how they met, their early struggles with the 403B, and how they got wise to that plan. They also talked about starting a 529 plan for their kids and opening a 457B. Matt reached out recently to say hi. And of course, I had to see if he and his wife wanted to come back on and update us on how things are going. Welcome back, Matt and Christina.
Thank you.
Great to be back. Thank you.
It is so good to see you too. And we just hit the record button, but we just spent 10 lovely minutes speaking about things that part of me wishes we had recorded, but I know we can get all of that on the podcast. Let's start off for those who didn't listen to that episode. I'll start with you, Christina. Can you share your role in education? What do you do?
Sure. Let's see. I'm going into I think this might be my 20th year as an English teacher. I'm going back into the classroom this year, middle school English. The past 6 years, I actually spent as an instructional coach in a middle school, which was awesome. It was a great experience, learned a lot, but I missed the kids and had an opportunity to go back in. So in a few short weeks, I will be back teaching 7th grade ELA.
Oh, I love it. And I've taught in the middle school. And when I got my teaching credential, I was fearful of teaching in middle school. I think there was just some stigma, and I taught at the elementary level and I taught a little bit the high school level. And then I went into middle school, and I love the environment. I love the kids. So I'm so glad that you're a middle school teacher. I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
and
it's
Matt,
definitely a calling.
Oh yeah. You know what? I feel like a lot of my colleagues say that. I think it really is a good fit for the right kind of teacher, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome stuff. And Matt, how about you?
I'm just going to say you are an excellent English teacher, middle school teacher.
I bet.
She's great. I think I'm going into my 20th year as well, or 21st. I don't know exactly. I'm a school counselor at a school in Westchester County, New York. I've been at this school for 16 years, and I work at grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. Obviously, your traditional school counseling roles, academic planning, advising, counseling, and of course, a lot of college counseling with the district I'm in.
Wow. I think you have such an important job. And I bet, I could only imagine the pressures on you. And I'd like to ask a little bit later about, getting into college a little bit more, if anything's changed in the 4 years since we spoke with you. I have a feeling it has. All right. Thanks, you two. Great to get the update on where you are in your teaching careers.
My wife's an 8th grade science teacher, and my daughter, she just started back yesterday with students. My daughter is an 8th grader. Yesterday was her first day back. So like middle school, and Dan and I got to speak at a middle school last week in Florida. It was really kind of cool. So I'm very familiar with middle school.
Yeah. I definitely think though that parenting the middle schoolers is far more challenging than teaching them.
Probably, although it's been wild. Today is the second day that I have been alone in my house other than the construction going on downstairs since March 13th of 2020. Wow. My wife and daughter came home thinking they were going to be off for 2 weeks. It's funny, yesterday my daughter was showing me her TikToks from the day that we'll be back in 2 weeks. Well, it just went back yesterday.
Wow.
It's 17 months later. And so like all of a sudden I have the entire house to myself for the first time in 17 months. It's really weird.
Wow.
That's weird.
Yeah. So I've had my daughter here, as a middle schooler for 17 minutes. It's actually been great. I already miss her. So she probably does not miss me at all. But I was re-listening to the podcast, and it was, other than my audio was not very great, it was such a fun podcast actually to listen to. You guys were so cool in sharing your information just so freely. And so I thought it'd be cool to see how, how things are going financially since we last spoke. Christina, what are some of the updates?
Well, I would say a good theme of the episode is like it's not too late. I think when we were on the episode previously with you, we were in our early 40s, and now we're past that. And we were feeling really behind. We really hadn't kind of gotten our acts together. We were in the process of getting, moving the money, or we had just moved the money into out of the dreaded high fee 403B. So we'd fixed that, but what we hadn't figured out was we just felt really, really far behind. Like, how are we gonna, we had, I think, two things. Number one, in New York, we are both going to be in it for the long haul, right? So we're going to be able to put our 30 years in and retire with reasonable pensions, God willing, that doesn't fall apart, although it doesn't look like it will. But we had relied on that as that was our retirement, and we hadn't really focused on supplementing that. So we felt very far behind. And then we also were really conflicted about what to do about college, because we have two kids. We want to be able to save money for college. We're certainly not in a position necessarily to pay full freight at private schools, but we wanted to at least be able to pay for, public school. And we just didn't know what our strategy would be or how to catch up. And I think we're really excited because since we spoke with you, we've really doubled down, and we're on target to pay for state schools for our kids. We're on target, I think, to have a reasonable retirement, supplementing our pension and not getting eaten up by fees along the way, So, we really now, and we also, once we finished paying for childcare, that was obviously a huge thing that we did for many years. But we got into kind of a groove and we're able to do it. And I'm shocked that I think we wrote down our like percentage, we've gone to like a huge savings rate after, I think we were saving maybe 10%. We tried to run some numbers. And then now we're up to like 35-40% we're able to put away. So and it was really, we didn't get extra jobs. we continue working, but I think it was just being really intentional about what we were doing and getting a plan. So, and I, credit you guys and your organization for that a lot, because it really helped us. Before we were just sending money to a guy and hoping that, something would be left when we retired.
Well, it's so amazing to hear, and thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I recall from the last time you were on the podcast, Matt said, because there's this saying that no one cares about your money more than you do, and you pushed back on that, which it's so funny that this is the podcast that I was listening to, because last week I made a presentation to a bunch of middle school teachers in Florida, and the title of my presentation was "Who Cares About Your Money?" And the entire point was, I brought up your exact phrase. No one, because we always hear it. We hear it in every personal finance. Every time someone's talking about personal finance, say, "Hey, no one cares more about your money than you do." And my point was the point that you were trying to make, Matt. That's just simply not true. There's way too much money to be made on you and your money.
Good point.
And so there are a lot of people that care more about your money than you do, and their goal is to get in between you and your money.
True.
And that was your point. You were pushing back on it and saying, you know what? We need to make that phrase true. And that's what you guys have been doing for the last 4 years. You've been making that phrase, "No one cares more about your money than you." You've been making that phrase true. And I applaud you for that. It's really, really cool. The thing I want to know is, Matt had access to a good 403B, but I believe, Christina, you did not have access to a good 403B in your school district. Has that changed?
We got access to Aspire.
Oh, okay.
That was, I think when we talked last, we had this weird thing that had happened where I think it was Fidelity. We had access to that, but then they kind of shut it down. They would
Yeah.
grandfather people in. I think I might have said this in the last one, and I lost it because I was on maternity leave. So then I couldn't get back into it. So we did add Aspire, but it's a little tricky though, because people don't know what to do with Aspire sometimes. Fortunately, I had a lot of good guidance from 403BYs, so I kind of knew what to do and where to put my money. But we also have access to the 457 B in New York State, which is a great plan. So that's,
yeah, let's talk about that. The 457 was, I mean, you guys talked about it in the last episode. You were trying to get access to it, and it sounds like you both have access to it. Are you're both contributing to it? Tell us about that.
Yeah,
How's that
so
going?
we both have access to it. We both I think we both max out our contributions to that. And I think that, and then Matt also, he has a 403B that he maxes out to as well through Vanguard, I think.
Fidelity.
Fidelity. And I moved my money into the Aspire back when we first started, and focused on that for a while because I was so intent on putting more money in there after I wrested it out of the hands of the high fee, he shall not be named 403B.
The
Voldemort of
yes,
403B plans.
We can name Voldemort's company. We do not like AXA.
Or it's equitable.
Oh, whatever it is.
Yeah. So I focused on that, and then I just recently switched to focus on the 457. I hope it to be able to contribute again through Aspire. But right now, again, we're really focusing on that college savings, and I feel like we're doing pretty well with our retirement.
I think we are. I'm proud of us.
It would be great to max out 4 vehicles. But it's nice that we have 4 vehicles to max out. I know a lot of people don't have access to that. So, but I think for now, I think we're doing okay.
And we're big fans of the 457, like you guys are. In fact, I was in school the other day we had a retreat, and we have a new counselor in our department. And I said, listen, when you're ready, because you got to be in the right mindset, obviously, new teachers, there's so much going on. And I said, when you're ready, come talk to me. There's also another woman in my office who actually is a big fan of 403BYs and a big supporter. And she said, I know I got to get the 403B. And both this colleague and I said, actually 457. So hopefully she'll talk to us soon.
Yeah, it's great, especially for new teachers. I was working with one of our new teachers this year to help him get it set up. It's just easier, at least in my district, to say, just do the 457. If you're not needing to transfer stuff out, just go with the 457. Chances are pretty good that a lot of districts in New York have it. So even if you move to a different district, you can, try to get it. It's just easier. There's retirement target date funds in it. So that's just, I'm not a financial planner. Like, I'm not going to get into what you're doing, but if you go here and look at this, the site's really easy to use. You're not paying a lot of fees. So it's like really good one-stop shopping. It's a bit more complicated, I find, when people are trying to get their 403Bs out of something.
Yeah. So how easy is it to open up that 457 and get contributions? Is it pretty simple?
I don't remember it being difficult at all. I mean, like you said, Christina, sometimes these things can be a little bit overwhelming and you don't have a lot of time, but I find the 457 site very easy, very simple. Those targeted funds make it very, somewhat idiot proof if you don't know what you're doing. So I just remember it being pretty easy.
Yeah, it's really easy to set it up. And then I think sometimes the complicated part is going through the third-party administrator. In New York uses Omni. And so you have to kind of set up your account with New York, then go through Omni and your payroll to do all that. And some schools have it set up a little bit differently. But that's easy. And huge shout out to Dan Dews, by the way, because
Oh, yeah.
I know people post about, we just configured some of the places we're putting our money. So we tend to be a bit more aggressive because I think we have like 10 more years, and we have a pension that we treat kind of as like a more safety, like so we tend to be a bit more aggressive than other people might be with our 403B or 457. And so he's just super helpful in like figuring out the different funds that, we have access to and suggesting a path. So we just switched around some of our funds within the 457. It was really easy.
It's very easy.
Dan Dews is amazing. I honestly don't know how we would do our Facebook group without someone like Dan. He's like, he is absolutely amazing. He doesn't want any credit either. And he's also from Seattle area.
Yes,
so
yes. I remember, I think one of your podcasts with him. Yeah.
super
He's a
cool
great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's so humble too.
Yeah.
Plus, he has a great first name. So, oh my gosh, so much good stuff there. Again, I just want to reiterate how impressed Scott and I are with the New York State Deferred Compensation 457B plan. On our homepage, we have a story at the top right called Find a Good Vendor, and it's under our Quick Start Guide. If you click that, and then you go down to 457B, you can click a link that says New York State Deferred Compensation plan, and you can type in your school district and see if it's available. Because unfortunately, not all, even though it's available to all teachers in New York, not all school districts make it available. So again, you can go that way, or if you're a New York teacher, I'm sure there's a quicker way to go about doing that. And Scott and I are always amazed that there is a S&P 500 fund. Scott, see if I get this right. The fee structure, or I should say cost basis, which Christina mentioned on the last podcast. I just love that. Scott, do I have this right? 0.00875? Is that what it was?
Something, or 0.0084, whatever it is. It's
Yeah.
like 0.008. It's less than 1 basis point.
It's
Less than a basis point. I don't even know what you call it. There is a term for less than a basis point, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's just amazing.
It's not AXA.
Anti-AXA.
Exactly. So I want to circle back real quick on Aspire, because Christina mentioned it. It can be a little confusing because with Scott described, I like how he described it. Aspire in some ways is like a supermarket of financial companies. If you walk into a big supermarket, it's overwhelming, right? The number of products. But what we like about it is that it does give you access to Fidelity or Vanguard, and they charge, Scott, see if I'm right here. I think it's $40 annual fee and 0.15% or 15 basis points on top of whatever a Vanguard or Fidelity charges. So that's still very low in comparison to most 403B products. So I just want folks to know that. And also, even though on your vendor list, it might say Aspire with a person's name, you don't go through that advisor. Do it directly. Come to the 403BY's Facebook group, and you can get help from people like Dan Dews if you have any questions. We have a lot of people that have used Aspire, and they can counsel you on that. We've done some podcasts. So I'm going to totally switch gears here. Christina, what are some of the books you and your students will read this year? Have you thought about, do you have your literature? Because as a former high school or middle school English teacher, I like to know.
Yeah, we actually do a lot of like book clubs and self-selected independent reading. Nice. So we don't do a lot of full class novels because, we like to get kids kind of reading what they enjoy and talking in groups with each other. So, but at times I might do a book like, I might do The Giver or The Outsiders, which I know both have been around a long time. Sometimes the challenge is finding enough copies of the book.
No, I remember that.
For kids. Yeah, we have also, I was actually just at school unpacking some books that had come in for some of our book clubs. Our 8th graders do a big social action book club unit, and I'm going to do a dystopian book clubs which I'm super into. So
You are.
So I gotta, I don't know if this is embarrassing or not to admit, but the first time I heard the term dystopian was from my daughter. And it was that whole, gosh, I'm forgetting it now, that series, The Hunger Games, not
Oh,
Hunger
yeah.
Oh
Games.
yeah.
Was it called Hunger Games? Yeah, it was
Yeah.
that whole thing. And like Lily went to, with her friends to like the midnight showing when it first started, and they dressed up and it's like,
Katniss.
yeah.
yes, there
Everdeen.
you
Katniss
go.
Everdeen.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was chilling. It reminded me of The Most Deadly Game. Do you remember
Oh,
that?
most dangerous game.
Most
Yeah.
Dangerous Game.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. My son just read that, although he was furious at his English teacher because she basically laid out what was happening. That's a story you just want to read and then realize, oh, spoiler
yeah.
alert for anyone listening. I'll do 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. You're the one being hunted, I
Right.
thought that was great. Well, good. I love the idea that kids have some autonomy over what they're reading. I know graphic novels seem to be very popular with kids. I don't know if that's, if
Oh,
I have
yeah.
that right, but I'm very glad that I didn't have a cell phone in middle school. I've had to, and this has been very self-conscious since the pandemic. I'm finally cooking regularly and reading regularly, and I'm actually getting physical books. And
Yeah.
I feel like I had to build up to it. I feel like it atrophied my attention span because of things like Twitter. So a special challenge, I imagine, Christina, teaching kids of this age.
Yeah, yeah, I think it is. I think it's really important to give kids a time and space to read in school because so many of them
Yeah.
they aren't doing it at home. I mean, we see it with our own
Yeah.
kids. We have, well, our older son is really, he's a reader. Of course, he reads like in the middle of the night when he's supposed to be sleeping. But my younger son, he'll read, but it's okay. Did you sit down your summer reading book and get it out? Like, take the phone away, just read, and eventually we get there, but it's not like he's gravitating
Right.
towards that for fun in the middle of the day. That's not.
Oh, I
not
love
working
hearing
so
this.
well.
So, Matt, anything you can share about, because I know there's a lot of people listening who have kids like I do, a 17-year-old or younger, getting into college. Is there, is anything changed last year, or
Yeah.
actually, yeah, last like spring, at least I know in California, the number of applications for UC schools off the charts.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the environment right now?
Yeah, it's one of the things I'll say is listen to the episode with Ron Lieber. He's
Was that good?
he's
Gosh.
great. Read his book, listen to him just in terms of the financial side of things. He's fantastic. And also the college cost lab. There you go. There's Ron's book. There it is. Yep, exactly. Yeah, of course, with the some people probably know this, but maybe not others, the testing optional movement. With the pandemic, many colleges went test optional, which overall is quite a good thing because it increases access. What we saw was at the extremely competitive colleges, or what some people call the highly rejective colleges, the Ivy League and those types of schools, it got just brutally hard because they had so many applicants because that barrier of testing was removed. So those schools, were harder. But there's so many, what I tell my families, there's so many great colleges out there. And the vast majority of them are still extremely attainable and are great places. And like Ron talks about in his book, they may offer some very good merit money. And that's actually a little bit of our college savings plan. We're not sure what's going to happen, but that's definitely in the equation. So
I think that's such a big point is, again, maybe I'm just using myself as an example, but everybody seems to know like the colleges that are either Ivy League or
Right.
the best football colleges or
Right.
basketball colleges. But to your point, there's just almost an unlimited number. I do worry that some of these smaller private schools with small endowments are under duress. And I think, it's complex. There's not one reason, but I think that I do worry about that.
that's
But
true.
yeah, I just think there's so much stuff out there. Ron, I almost said Ron because I'm thinking Ron Lieber. Matt,
No, I'm not him.
well, I think you have a lot going for you, sir. Do you think it's a fair criticism that schools like Stanford and Harvard it's absurd that they haven't expanded access and more seats, more professors.
Yeah.
It's just,
It's yeah, you hear that. It's hard. It's they're their own school and their own institution, so they can do what they want. But on the same token, it's like, hey, you have this great thing. Why don't you make it more available? Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if maybe they had some more seats. That's for sure. But it's still always going to be a finite number, and that's like I said. I
Sure.
just always try to focus on there's more than 50 colleges in this country, and whether it's the media or just like you said, sports or whatever. It's just there's so many great places out there, and
Yeah.
that's what I try to focus on.
No, I think those are very wise words. Okay, so how for you two, we'll start with Christina, was teaching during the pandemic? Was it face to face? Was it remote? Was it a combination? How challenging was that?
Well, we went back, we actually both went back to a hybrid situation in September. So we were going in we were home one day a week.
Yeah.
But basically we were in the school, and in the middle school, we had half of our students rotating in each day. So in every other, and we had some students that were fully remote. I was very fortunate in that I was not a classroom teacher. So I was supporting a lot of classroom teachers who were, teaching, what do they call it? Concurrent teaching.
Right.
Right. So teaching through Zoom and students in the classroom at the same time. Which was incredibly challenging. And
Can't imagine.
they did an amazing job. I mean, our teachers were incredible. So it was terrible, and we were all hoping to not do it again. I don't know what it's going to look like this year. We've been told there'll be no remote teaching. We're expecting to go back fully, but I don't know, we don't go back until September 1st. So there's still a couple weeks. But yeah, it was very, very, very challenging. We actually brought all of our kids back after spring break last year. Some kids stayed out, some kids stayed remote. That was actually a little bit worse in some ways for the teachers, because if you only had 2 or 3 kids on your Zoom, you were more likely to forget about them when you had 20, 25 sitting in the room and a couple on the computer. That was challenging in different ways. So, yeah, our kids were great. I mean, really, all things considered, they were super resilient, and, we didn't have a lot of issues. They did what they were supposed to do in these circumstances. So wasn't ideal. I know we were all hoping to be back to normal. I certainly was, especially going back in without having done that. So yeah, it was not easy.
Well, thanks for sharing. And I think, as you said, the kids are fine. I think it's some of the parents, but we won't touch that. Matt, how about you with your job last year?
It was the same thing like everyone else. It's hard, challenging. We all did the best we could. We all learned on the fly. A tremendous, I mean, just, talk about Zoom fatigue, for the kids. It was, but just on Zoom, constantly counseling kids on the computer. You adapted, like Christina said. The kids overall were great with it. We were hybrid on a macro level, a couple of different versions of hybrid. And then we went back full time again, like around spring break, and I think it was April. One strange little positive of it was of all the Zooms and the hybrid schedule. It was easier to schedule parent meetings. I have a lot of parent meetings, whether it's talking about scheduling or talking about colleges. And believe it or not, it was actually easier because the parents didn't have to come into school. Yeah. So it was someone could be at work, and someone could be home. So that was actually a silver lining. We got, it was very little stress scheduling conferences. And so listen, we did the best we could, just like everyone else.
Do you think you'll be able to keep that scheduling format?
It's interesting. It's a big philosophical debate in the school is, what should stay? And obviously the face-to-face interaction we feel is always best. just in a counseling environment, like physically being in the same space. But it does make it easier for people not to have to miss work. So I think probably what's going to happen is if we are open, to a normal degree, we'll encourage people to come in. But if not, we'll allow the Zoom, not quote unquote allow Zoom meetings. I suspect we'll probably continue a lot of that.
Yeah, I really hope we keep whatever good elements there were from this pandemic. I also hope there's less commuters, less pollution,
True.
more work from home. Scott and I were just talking about this yesterday. I feel so lucky for my high school son. His school used to start like at 7:18 every morning, and now it's 8:30.
Yeah.
And he had his first day yesterday. Although when he got home, he said that a lot of the kids don't like it, and a lot of the kids work, and so they can't start work until later. I know sports was always the thing, but I just think if you look at how high school kids, their sleep patterns, it's just so much better for them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Hope that stays. Yeah. So really just two more questions. I'll start with you, Christina. Is there anything else you'd like to share that maybe we didn't touch on?
Well, this is tangentially related, but because it's been so helpful to us, the New York State 529 plan is also a really great vehicle. It's very low cost. You don't need an advisor. I think we talked about this in our last one, but we had our ex advisor put us into a Virginia plan and was pulling money himself. And, we educated ourselves more on the 529 because that's an important part of our savings strategy. And then we're happy to find the New York plan, which is, again, the barrier to entry is it's very easy. The site's easy. And actually, it's funny, this summer we were with my husband's brother is a hedge fund person of sorts who lives in Hong Kong, but we got together with him in New York, and he has two daughters in college and actually also uses the New York State 529 plan. So that was like another, little boost.
If he's using it.
Yeah. We're like, okay, maybe we're onto something good here. So, but I would say that's been really helpful. Again, thinking about our strategy is like multi-pronged with the kids. So I would put a shout out for that. I think New York State's doing we have a lot of issues in New York State right now, but in terms of some of those plans, I think they're worth looking into, I would say.
Thanks for sharing that. And Matt, anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, just kind of along those lines. I'm just looking at some notes here. It's been 4.5 years since we spoke, and reiterating, like, we're kind of normal people, like we didn't go into like massive lockdown mode. We didn't stop taking vacations. We didn't stop eating out, but we did, we were able to change that savings rate from about 10% to about 35% just by kind of saying, okay, let's every 6 months or so, okay, let's add a little bit more. And then we adapt our lifestyle. Let's add some more and we adapt our lifestyle. So we really kind of just did it incrementally, but we still took vacations. We still lived a normal, middle-class lifestyle. And, we actually didn't know these numbers until we prepared for this podcast. And said, wow, we're doing okay here.
No.
And
well, I was just going to say, I love that this is a real world example. I love that you didn't go from 0 to 50 miles an hour on this. You stepped it. It always examples like this remind me of the book Into Thin Air by John Krakauer about climbing Everest. You don't just climb Everest, you go up a little bit, you come down, you go up, and then you have to go across these, I guess, aluminum ladders, and there's like these crevices. So hopefully it wasn't like frightening like that for you. But again, we appreciate this kind of realistic information that I think most people can apply.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's for us, it was really like we had to learn, right? We had to figure out what and not be scared of the 403B and investing. It's like it was scary.
It was scary.
Like all
of
first, that
yeah.
is very easy to say, hey, Mr. AXA guy, yes, take all my money and put it someplace because I don't know what I'm doing. And that was very bad. So I think once we educated ourselves, found out what we could do, found these vehicles, and that makes it easier to say with confidence, yes, I know, this is what we're doing. And your podcast has been super helpful listening. I can't remember which one I was listening to the other, because I listened to them out of order. You had a great retirement one with the wealthy custodian and Jackie and, and just like, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see, because it's hard to think this, but we can retire. And well, Matt's like 7 more years, like it's, from this job, but we'll probably do something else, but, from this. So to really be able to say, yeah, this is our goal, can we have this much in there so that when we retire, that, and the college, paid for and all that kind of stuff. It's just, once you feel like you're putting your money into a place that you can feel good about, and that it's actually going to make money and you're not going to be, you're not going to be wasting it all on these fees. It makes it a lot easier to make the plan and to follow through on it and to slowly put it in there, not kind of outsource it to somebody. And also just quickly, I think Matt looked up our investment fees. So, and it looks like we pay about $250 a year in fees.
Total.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because once you guys taught us so much, the biggest thing you guys did was, AXA, get us out of AXA. We'd still be there if it weren't for you. So that was my original email to you, Dan, was, again, thank you, years later, and you, Scott, as well. But so I started to track fees, because, we have it on Quicken and all that stuff. And so I just looked it up, and it's, everything's got very low basis points. Everything's very, affordable.
That's like $20 a month. That's like a Netflix subscription or something.
Right.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Yep.
Scott, I've never thought to do this. I love that they did this.
Yeah.
Because we always talk in basis points. Say it again.
He tracks everything.
I
do.
This. This is good.
For some reason, I like I like putting things in categories.
Hey, spreadsheets, right?
Yeah.
So then I got a question for you then, since maybe this is something that sounds like you might do. What about credit cards and points and miles? Is that a thing that you guys are into? I feel like it might be. Okay.
Oh yeah,
jackpot.
It's so funny. I was listening to the one you did. I forgot who it was with. I was listening to that one.
Justin,
what's that?
I think Justin.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
I forgot exactly, but yeah, Christina got us into that as well, and oh boy.
Well, we started. So
yeah, we've done well.
When we were on your podcast in 2017, in the summer of 2018, we went to Hawaii on a almost completely points paid for.
Didn't pay for any airfare.
Pay for anything.
Barely a hotel. And it's funny you mentioned that, because we just started to kind of start churning some again. We let some things rest, and now we're coming back to the chase, the 4 years and love it.
Because we spend a lot of time flying to the West Coast because my family's there. So we're always like, looking for airline miles, and, it's just too expensive to be flying a family of 4 across the country.
Absolutely.
So, and we, way back in 2014, and had an awesome experience where we actually got to spend the entire summer in Hawaii house sitting. So with our kids were little then, it was great. It was awesome. But then now our kids are like, whoa, we really like Hawaii.
It's all downhill. How did you arrange that? Was that through like an acquaintance, or was that like a organization that set you up?
It was a very good family friend of my parents, who actually just recently passed away, but they have a coffee farm on the Big Island, and she would spend her summers up in British Columbia. So she had a cat who needed to always be watched, and she would hire, house sitters. And then one year, like, well, let's see, we're both teachers and our kids are young, and, we don't have a cat, so we could do this. And she was like, oh, that's great. And it was awesome. It was a really, really great experience.
It was experience of a lifetime.
Well, I've heard there is an organization where you can take care of people's homes. It's often just simply taking care of pets. Because we have a dog. Boarding a dog is expensive. I think it's traumatic for our dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage people to look into something like that if they're interested. I mean, anything you can do to to
we
go
should,
cool places.
yeah, we should probably do a whole episode on this, Scott. I just got back. I was telling you before we start recording, I took 4 teenage boys camping in Mammoth, California. And there's always a camp host. And I got to talking to these camp hosts. And I think this is a pretty cool deal if you like camping. They have retired. I think he was a police officer. They retired and sold their house. I think it was Charleston, South Carolina, I think. And they are spending the next 2 years. They bought an Airstream and they have a truck. They pull it. They're going around the country working as travel hosts, which they said is really not a hard job, gives them huge flexibility. They've seen tons of places and they're looking for a place to land to retire. Scott, you'll appreciate this. They said, we found the place. And I'm like, oh, cool. Like, cause I think it's such an interesting topic. Yeah. Where is it? Well, it's San Diego, except there was a 1,200 square foot place they were looking at because they want to be walkable wherever they live. It was like $750,000. So they're like, well, back to the drawing board.
Yeah,
we cannot afford
expensive.
San Diego.
Oh boy.
It's sad. Well, so I'll see you in 4.5 years. Should I just send an iCal, invite now?
Sounds good.
Well, this is so awesome. And I would love to, I promise, Matt, next time you email me, I won't say, hey, you're going to be on the podcast. We'd love to keep hearing from you. And especially when maybe your kids choose college or something, if you feel like there's something you want to share that could help our audience, just, don't hesitate. But we're also open to just corresponding with you without any kind of obligation to be on the podcast.
Sounds great.
That sounds awesome. And we should say, well, and I think Ron Lieber talked about this in his podcast, I actually took my son, who's only 15, he's going to be a sophomore. We did his first official college visit at Seattle U. When we were out there. And, I think Ron talked about it, and it's something that we've talked about too, which is, really starting early to talk to our kids about colleges and what we're going to be able to afford. And, Matt has a lot of knowledge, obviously, probably more than your, average dad necessarily has, which is super helpful. But you can start to see already at this age, he hears things from friends and his cousins and, oh, but this is a good school, or maybe I want to go to that,
Good,
and to really we're already managing expectations, and really, trying to get in front of it and show him like these schools, there's so many great colleges out there. And I know some people worry about putting that pressure on early, and we're trying not to put pressure on him, but just to start thinking about it. And I think Ron had said that's like something that they're doing, is not waiting until junior year to say, oh, okay, let's look at some colleges, but to start laying that groundwork. So that's, when we go places, we're like, yeah, let's go look at the school, why not? And so that is something that in the meantime, of course, we'd love to talk about it. We'll see where we are 3 years from now.
I'm interested in your take, both of you, as this applies to your kids, but then also as it applies to how you counsel kids, but about taking a gap year. Ron Lieber was pretty big on that. What are your thoughts?
It's I think gap years can be wonderful. In my high school, in our district, it's not something that kids do a lot. But in my experience, I have had a few do it, and it can be great for maturity, for figuring out what you want to do. A lot of times kids are just programmed. You go from, grade 12 to grade 13, and you can pause. And one thing that our district does that I'm happy that we do is we have a gap year fair. So there's a lot of organizations out there that help foster gap years. Now, it was obviously challenging with the pandemic, but there's a lot of places out there that'll help you get jobs or help you get experiences. I had a kid once who hiked the Appalachian Trail, and this kid was top of his class, whatever, and he just said, Sweeney, I need some time. And his parents, God willing, said, yeah. And he went to school the next year. But I think it could be a fantastic thing for the right kid.
Yeah, I love this, Scott. I always say, I think you do too, if we could do it again, right?
Yeah.
I think I would chart a different course, but again,
I'd like to take a gap year right now.
Yeah. We
I
all
think they
do.
call it a sabbatical for us.
Yeah.
Well, I would get Matt and Christina to be guest hosts, Scott. So
There you
they
go.
could fill in for you. So there you go.
There you go.
Well, folks, thank you so much. Please stay in touch. And again, it's just so great to see you and hear how well you're doing. This is, I know you've like given us some credit, but again, it's so many people like Ron Lieber, like the Facebook group, like other, resources you come in contact in. I think collectively we are all making a difference.
That's definitely.
Agreed.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys again.